Hello friends, welcome back to the homestead. If you are brand new here, my name is Constance and this is A Good Life Farm, and here on my channel I share at least 3 videos every single week on homesteading, home cooking, and back to basics, just a much slower and simpler way of living. And I also run 2 websites, agoodlifefarm.com with hundreds of recipes and articles, as well as Wholesome Skillet, which has a focus on cooking from scratch and has an emphasis on being grain-free and no sorts of processed or artificial ingredients, just very farmhouse to kitchen table sorts of recipes. So this video today is actually part of a collaboration that has been organized by Anna over at Fermented Homestead, and it is focusing on fermenting foods. All through the month of February, there's just tons and tons of fermented videos, fermented foods being shared by a number of YouTube channels who really like getting back to basics and sharing a forgotten skill. Now, some of the channels are very skilled, very experienced with it. Some are novices, some are brand new. I tend to fall under the sort of a novice level. Fermenting is not something I have done a lot of, and so I like getting pushed out of my comfort zone because it is something that I want to do more often. Now, I have certain things that are fermented that I absolutely love, and one of those is sauerkraut. I have never met a sauerkraut that I didn't like, and so I thought that would be the perfect thing to share with all of you. Now, the sauerkraut that I have made is just a very basic, very simple, foundational sauerkraut, and it really just has 2 ingredients. And I did 2 different versions of it using 2 different kinds of cabbage. I'm a huge fan of red cabbage as well as green cabbage, and so I decided to make some with red and green varieties of cabbage. Now, when I got my sauerkraut started, the first thing that I did was I saved some of the outer leaves from the heads of the cabbage so that I could use those later on when I jarred everything up. And then I went ahead and I sliced up both of the varieties of cabbage. Now, as I did each version, I put it into a large bowl that I had sitting on a kitchen scale. That way I would know exactly how much cabbage that I had. And then once I had the measurement for the cabbage, I simply calculated what 2% of that weight would be, and that is the quantity of the salt that I used. And I just sprinkled the salt in with the cabbage, and then I just simply massaged the salt into the cabbage leaves, giving it firm pressure, and just kind of worked that salt into the leaves to help the cabbage to begin releasing the juices. So I did that for about 10 minutes or so, and then I just covered the bowl up with a tea towel and I let it sit for a couple of hours to give that cabbage time to release more liquid. And I did the same thing with the green cabbage as well. Then after the cabbage had sat for a while to release some of those juices, I went ahead and I packed everything into sterile jars. You just want to make sure to pack the cabbage in a little bit at a time. Pack it in very, very firmly using a wood dowel or cabbage pounder, and that helps again release more juices from the cabbage. You should not have to add any water to your jars. All of your liquid should come from the cabbage itself. And the more firmly that you pack it in, the more liquid is released. Now you want to leave about 1.5 to 2 inches from the top of your jars to the top of the cabbage itself. Then I took the spare cabbage leaves that I had set aside and simply cut a couple cabbage leaves the size of the jar. I just set the jar on top and traced around it. Then I slid the leaves into the jars and I used those to help keep the shredded cabbage down underneath the liquid. And I use 2 or 3 leaves for each jar when I do this. Once I had the cabbage leaves down there in place, I went ahead and I dropped in one of my glass weights, and again, that'll help keep the cabbage underneath the liquid, because any cabbage that gets exposed to the air will begin to break down and can mold, and you don't want that because the salty liquid is what preserves the cabbage and allows it to ferment and not rot. Then I close the jars with my fermenting lids. I put the jars on a tray to catch any liquid that might escape the jars, because sometimes that happens and there's a very good chance that it will. So you always want to make sure that you have something underneath that can catch that. And then I set all of that in my pantry in a cool, dark place, and I left it there for 10 days. Now, if you don't like very fermented sauerkraut, you can actually start testing it around day 3 or 4 and just give it a taste and see if you like it where it's at, or you can just let it go longer. So today it has been 10 days and I'm about to open my jars and give them a taste. Now when you're fermenting, you do want to check your jars every day and make sure everything is still good. Make sure all of the cabbage is still underneath the liquid. If you see anything that is exposed, or if you see anything that looks like mold beginning to form, you want to scrape that out and discard it, and just make sure everything is still underneath the liquid. So I think I'm going to try my little jar of red cabbage first. And the smaller the container that you use, the faster it's going to ferment. All right. Pull out my big leaves that I had underneath here. Alright. So I'm gonna give this a try. Mmm. That's so good. All right. Those are so good. I love them. Now the green cabbage actually still has some of that cabbagey taste, like a mix between the sauerkraut that you would buy at the store and fresh cabbage. It's kind of right in between. Now, if I wanted this to have more of a sour flavor, I could let it ferment even longer. The longer it goes, the more of that fermented flavor it's going to get. But I think these are exactly where I want them to be. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put closing sealing lids on these jars, and I'll store these in the refrigerator and we can eat them as we want. Alright you guys, so that is my walkthrough on making homemade sauerkraut. A very basic, very simple recipe. If you would like to get a printable version of this with the complete instructions, you can find that on my website, and I will put a link to that down below underneath this video. Now be sure to check out all of the other videos that are part of this collaboration all month long. There is a playlist, and I will put a link to that underneath as well. Now at the end of the month, there is going to be a giveaway of some fermenting supplies sponsored by Anna at Fermented Homestead. And to enter the giveaway, all you have to do is watch the videos that are going up during the month. And every time you watch a video and leave a comment underneath that video, that comment is an entry to the giveaway. So be sure to watch the video where she talks about all of the details. I'll put a link to that down below as well, and you can watch that and learn all about it, including what she's given away. Again, if you are new here, you can find both of my websites linked underneath this video. And if you would like to stay up to date on everything happening here at the homestead, I have a free email newsletter. And if you sign up for that, you won't miss a thing. So thanks for joining me here again in the Homestead Kitchen. My name is Constance at A Good Life Farm, and I will talk to y'all next time.